All right. Well, I guess there's enough people here that we can go ahead and get going. Um, Over to you, Ralph.
Okay, let me share the update link and share my screen. We have released 0925, and it's the one that's running on mainnet observer nodes and all testnet nodes at the moment. The mainnet validator nodes are not yet updated to the 0925, but we will be doing so in the next day or so, next couple of days. The release nodes are here. What's different about the release nodes this time is we started doing the release nodes on GitHub with a link to the Jira old format release node. So now we have both of them with a link from the Jira. Let me see if, with the GitHub, let me see if I can show you how that looks.
Share your screen.
Oh, I thought I was, my apologies. I'm going to share that. And I think I want it to be on this other one. So here, basically this link, I think if you see my mouse, that's the old format Jira link. And the one that says GitHub is the new format of release nodes. This is the first time we're doing them in GitHub. So I want to take a little bit of time to explain the method behind the madness here as to what we're doing in the format. So since this is all in GitHub, basically all the PRs and everything is readily linkable. And so without an intention to repeat what at least current thinking is, that we will just do an overview of what is significant about the release. And then we link to all the PRs that are in the release right here. And when you click on it, it should be showing a nice list of everything that went into that release, which is about 25 PRs here. Now, on these PRs, we have put labels to say what is a bug fix, what is an enhancement, what is a build or CI or testing related type of PR. And if any new features, they would be listed either. I mean, currently we are calling new features only something that is a core platform new feature, but in truth, in this particular release, you will see that, for example, there is a web admin API, HTTP admin API, that's new from a feature standpoint, but it's not like a core platform new feature, so we just called it an enhancement. Likewise, there is a new byte to hex method, and that probably could or should be called a new feature, but we have called that also enhancement, this one here. By the way, both of these are contributed by RChain. Shout out to RChain and a thank you. A lot of the other things, we can go into that in a little bit of detail, but this is how you get to what is in a release from a complete PR perspective. Now, going back to the release notes on GitHub, there is another link in here you would see, and that links to the old format release notes in Confluence. Now, the difference between these two is this. I mean, first of all, this is the kind of release notes that people were used to before, and this lists all the Jira tickets that are completed in this release. as well as anything that was worked on since the last release. And this becomes relevant when we are in between releases. For example, the second part becomes relevant. Now, the difference between what is on the GitHub versus what's on the Jira list is this. Sometimes we kind of review the Jira list and say, okay, this particular ticket can be closed either because it's not relevant anymore, or it has been combined with something else, or we're not able to replicate the issue. So there are a variety of reasons why a Jira ticket may be disposed of with a done status, but that does not necessarily result in a PR. So in that sense, the Jira list is sort of a superset of the PRs, equal or superset of what is included in the PRs. So that's the reason why we have those for now. Now, over time, as we start, as we do new issues in GitHub, we are going to be, this Jira will become not so relevant anymore. So at that time, we might stop doing that link. But for now, each of the PRs has a link to the, in the name indicates what Jira ticket it relates to. And when you click on one of these, you actually will be seeing a link to the Jira ticket itself that you can navigate to. But like I said, over time, we will be completely migrating off of the Jira. So that's kind of where we are. So that's what it is. And then there is the links to the assets, the actual code that you can download. So because this is the first time that we're doing it, and the reason we're doing it this way is we wanted to keep it non-repetitive, but providing links to all relevant information in a single place, so that basically everything that's being said about the release and the tickets and everything else is consistent. So please provide any feedback you might have. If you think this is too sparse or too much or too confusing, anything at all, we would like to listen to what the feedback is and improve the format of the release notes on GitHub. So that's one of the things. Now, coming to the content of the release itself, the 0925, which will be in the mainnet in the next few days, unless we observe something substantial. It is a somewhat breaking change, primarily because there are a lot of configuration names and options changed. So this is something that people might want to become familiar with as to what the CLI configuration options are, how they relate to the previous ones, and the sequence or order of them might have changed. So you can use rnode --help and certainly look at the default .conf. So we're trying to make things easy for people to start running the node. So they should generally be able to just use the default .conf and run the node without a problem. But again, on these config changes, please provide us any feedback if you notice something that does not work for you or in your environment, or somehow this is causing trouble for you relative to how you're using our node. So that's something. And then add this new method, bytes to hex, that Arthur provided. It is a new method. So technically, if we had a whole bunch of nodes running by different people, and if some people chose to update to this, but not others, there would be slashing and issues to deal with that. But right now, basically all the nodes are being run by the co-op, so that's not an issue in this particular release, but it is a new method in Rolang. So the developers, Rolang developers might be interested in using it where it makes sense for them to do so. So that's the other thing there to note. Okay, Here we are back to the community update. I already talked to what's going on with the releases. Again, to emphasize, the mainnet validator as of this minute is running the 0923 LTS, but we will switch to 0925 in the next few days. Most everything else, the testnet, all the testnet nodes and the observer nodes on the mainnet are running 0925. The significant changes with 0925, there are many bug fixes, configuration changes, and it's basically a preparatory release for last finalized state that we have been talking about for quite a while. Specifically, there is the key value store construct in LMDB that's included in 0925, and that is going to be used by DAG store, block store, cache transactions, and state changes. So that's a significant chunk of preparation and enablement for the for last finalized state. The other things I mentioned, the HTTP admin API and the bytes to hex method. And we also have now the ability to visualize the DAG from any point, as opposed to being limited like we were earlier. There is improved logging and improved handling of errors in the web API. The API server also has configuration. And now there is a new API call in the HTTP API for is finalized. You can check whether a particular block is finalized or not. All of these things basically enable us to use, not only create the last finalized state, but also have the last finalized state be used by the rest of the system. So that's what all of this is about, by and large. The 0926, which is the release that we're working on, and we might actually do a pre or breakdown 0926 into two parts, because some parts are already well underway, meaning they're either being tested or merged into the new into the dev version beyond 0925. And then there are some that still have a bit of work to be done. So rather than bunch up everything into a huge big release again for 0926, 0925, as you can see, is a big release. So our preference is to do a small release of whatever is completed, and probably we'll do an 0925-1 or something like that before we do the 0926, so that the testing burden and the migration burden is somewhat contained. And plus whatever is already done, rather than holding it up for another whole month, we may be able to push it out to the mainnet relatively quickly. So that's kind of what we are planning on. So parts of what we're looking at in 0926, investigation of slashing errors that was going on, and also the rewards accounting or cost accounting bug that we found, whereby when we did the dashboard, we were seeing negative rewards in some cases, and we're investigating that. But the interim release will release whatever is fixed so far, and then the 0926 is still targeted to be the last finalized state approximately about a month from now. That's the main part of what is going on. This paragraph is just a repetition, or I just left it in for reminding people what this last finalized state is all about. It allows faster catch-up by nodes. It allows offloading older data. Essentially, once you have something in a last finalized state, it's almost like a new genesis. You don't have to go back to the beginning of the blockchain when you want to verify something. You can just start with the last finalized state and just move forward from there. So And also it allows for leaner and less bloated node. So that's all going on. On the SRE, we were working quite heavily with Gurinder has been, and Ian has been, and Steve Henley has been working with IBM to try to resolve the issues and all that. We're not sure if it's an organizational or a technology problems they're having on their end, but support has been very difficult from IBM. So we, at this time, it looks like, unless something drastically changes on their end, it looks like we will be using them for non-critical stuff. I mean, we could probably, we currently have Sandbox and the testnet migrated to IBM, and I think some of the monitoring nodes are also migrated to them. So we should be able to continue to use that without a problem, but we think moving or hoping to move the mainnet nodes to IBM may be a little bit too risky. So we will stay with Google for that, at least for now. And we're exploring Oracle as an option to see if they're any better, or if they also have either growing pains or other issues. So we, once bitten, twice shy. We want to be particularly careful, do some evaluation ahead of time before we do anything with Oracle. So that's where we are on that. I talked some time ago about this thing that we want to expand the number of validators and how we support validators. And we talked about a shard in a box or node in a box type of a thing using Ansley or some other small factor or smallish devices, low-cost devices like Ansley does. I think Ansley runs on a Raspberry Pi. So this is these kinds of activities are something the community can perhaps support us. So I wanted to highlight that. We are going to, in the GitHub, we're going to put a bunch of items with a help wanted tag to see if the community can help out with some of these things, because we don't necessarily have to do that. This is the same whether somebody in the community does it or not. Likewise, the possibility of running multiple nodes in a single machine is another task perhaps the community can do. So we will, there's only one task in there right now that that has the help wanted tag, but we'll probably be adding a bunch more with the help wanted tag so that the community can engage with and help with this process of decentralizing and accelerating the decentralization of validator nodes, because I'm sure everybody in the community is interested in that, and they've been asking questions about, when do we add nodes? Well, you start doing a little bit here and there with the node versions that are there, discover what problems there are or not. And that would help us down the path of checking out a variety of both hardware configurations as well as network and network reliability configurations. For example, if you're running a node from your home, we want to know how that's working out. So all of those we're going to put out as help wanted tasks for the community to bite on if they choose to. That's where we are. The migration from Jira to GitHub, or the hybrid operation, continues. I think that's about all we have. And today Theo, did you want to give a teaser for what you want to do next week or two in your demo?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we're working a lot on the UI part of the voting DApp. So as you can see, it kind of integrates with GitHub. So it shows all the issues from GitHub repository. So right now it shows archives. And here we have items of business, which is mostly empty. There's only one. Let's take an archive for now. If you click vote, you can see it shows the actual issue. You can load comments. can read comments. Okay, now to the fun part. Now we can create a vote. You can add some options. And submit. Right now it won't be able to deploy to the network. I'm gonna add it later at some point. We're gonna skip for now. And now you can see different, basically, tickets for each member. So the idea is that I was supposed to kind of show a demo where I kind of vote for those members for now, because it's the fastest way. But it doesn't work right now, so I won't be able to show much more. But the idea is that for next week, I will be able to include some community members to participate in the vote. So we can vote on some topic together. So that's where I am right now.
Nice, nice.
At least UI part is finished, pretty much.
Does anybody have any questions either on what Theo showed or on the tech update? Any questions, comments?
I just want to say, Theo, that's really exciting to see that, you know, the burgeoning UI of this coming to fruition. That's awesome.
Thanks.
Looks nice. All right. Then I guess it's time for our new segment. Daryl, are you ready to give the community in review segment?
Yes, I am.
Over to you.
Okay. So, hey, everybody. So this is my first installment of the RChain Community Week in Review. And because acronyms are fun, AAF, we could call it the RChain Community Whir. So anyway, it'll be a brief recap of all the Zoom calls that happened throughout the week and other activity that may have come up within the community. So, so here we go. So for the week of Thursday, June 18th to today, Wednesday, June 24th, on Thursdays at 4 p.m. UTC is the governance committee call. And in the last call, the governance committee convened an ad hoc compensation committee to discuss board compensation. RAW is to complete a recommendation for the next board meeting on Tuesday, June 23rd. Steve Ross Talbot announced that he'll be stepping aside as the chair of the governance committee effective July 2nd. So discussion revolved around RAW taking over the position. There was some discussion around an issue from Dan Connolly that was opened on GitHub, asking the governance committee to take an active role in the Zulip approach voting DApp. Steve Ross Talbot said a proposal can be set up to bring before the board. Also on Thursdays at 6 p.m. UTC is the DApp development call. And in that one, Theo pushed a branch to the GitHub RChain communities /Zulip for debugging in VS Code. Also on Thursdays at 7 p.m. UTC is the newly formed RChat call, and discussion for that revolved around the voting DApp. Fridays at 3:30 UTC is the climate and coordination call. And last Friday, we began by discussing methane leaks at abandoned oil wells, tracking emissions from aircraft, and a recent Jeremy Rifkin speech where he literally describes RChain by connecting 3 emerging trends. On Saturday at 2 p.m. UTC was an RChat workshop where Dan Connolly provided guidance on downloading and installing his demo. Monday at 2 p.m. was the Casper stand-up call. Greg discussed type rewrite systems. This is a new kind of rewriting system that allows for finer control of the conditions on terms being rewritten, made possible by operational semantics in logical form. Operation semantics in logical form is the updated term, I guess you could say, for what they were calling ladle. It might be a less catchy acronym, but because acronyms are fun, we could call it OSELF or UpSelf. But anyway, so yeah, operational semantics and logical form. Mondays at 5 p.m. UTC is the art on the blockchain call. Eric and the crew discussed rev staking as part of the decision-making process and trust metrics. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. UTC is the RChain education call. The education working group discussed the schema post in the education channel in Discord, which illustrates using multiple tuple spaces. We discussed updates on the Jira to GitHub migration and the resulting GitHub process improves. Also on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. UTC is the communications working group call. So yesterday, we discussed updates to the blog and website. There's a completely revamped blog site coming. We also discussed social media schedule. We went over James M's project management doc, and I talked about the new approach to the weekly newsletter that will be derived from these community debrief calls. Also on Tuesday at 6 p.m. UTC is the DApp developer working group call. And they discussed the anonymous voting DApp that Vue is developing. They explored possible names for branding, product offerings, and target customers for the voting DApp. Wednesdays this morning, was the member Zoom Hangout. The crew reviewed Dan Connolly's start on a web UI for voting and heard that Theo's voting app should be ready to show next week. And that's it. I'd say shout outs to Steve Henley and Jim Weitzcarver for helping with these recaps.
All right. Any questions or comments about the community in review? Cool. So yesterday was a special board meeting, as usually is. So there were 3 resolutions. One was a resolution recognizing Raul for his efforts over the last year. Another was a resolution approving in principle a China team marketing proposal and putting a cap on the spend on that. Finally, the third one was a resolution that approving a 100 rev for each member that sends to mem-gov at RChain.coop a rev address for coordination and governance by the 31st of July. All of these resolutions will be up on GitHub shortly. Yeah, it was a very active day for the board yesterday. Any questions or comments? Yeah, rev address to that email address. So anyway, if you have any questions or comments about those, now would be the time.
Yeah, those draft resolutions are all posted on GitHub now. So it's the link is in the chat.
Awesome, perfect. Any other questions or comments from the community? All right. Today I was interviewed on Blockchain Blueprint. That link will go out. As I mentioned last week, Christian Williams gave a talk about the operational semantics and logical form work at MIT to a bunch of MIT mathematicians. And that was very well received. Already the talk has generated interest. Protocol Labs reached out to us, and we're looking to schedule a talk or conversation in the next few days. That's moving very rapidly. There are some updates which I can't give here that are will be discussed on the Friday's meeting. But any questions about those other marketing and outreach items? Okay. Thanks to everyone for your engagement today. And looking forward to seeing you throughout the week, and stay safe, please.
Thanks, Greg.